but that's sort of outside of this. We're well aware of that situation. In fact, we will be overseeing the cleanup of that stream bed in the bank. We were out there 2-3 years ago looking at this. So back to the study. So we got this study. We organized the scope of work. We hired a Jim, can you control me here as okay, next slide, please. Next slide. So we have a contractor, the Perma-Fix Environmental Services. These folks were actually our contractor back in the 2000 timeframe when we rolled out all these solid waste regs. So they're very familiar with all this operation. This is interesting. This study crosses all of the department groups, bureaus and such, oil and gas, waste management, Bureau of Labs. We've got our own Bureau of Labs that will be doing all the samples. We have a contract laboratory that will do 10% down in South Carolina. Joe Glenn, we've contracted out for that. So it cross-cuts pretty much every program in the department. This is sort of a cradle-to-grave study. Well pads, the wastewater, the flowback water that comes back from these facilities go off to centralized wastewater treatment facilities. Some of these are zero discharge. I've been to a couple of them on the Williamsport. They actually evaporate. They'll treat the water, drop the metals, drop all the solids, all the salts and other materials, they'll flocculate, settle all that out, filter it all out. And some of them actually distill the water and drop distilled water into the sanitary sewer. In fact, it was interesting, this one facility, the guy says, yeah, this is distilled water. He says, you can drink this. And he was about to drink a beaker of this. I said, no. They monitor all this wastewater. There are a few of these conventional well brine treatment facilities out there in the Northwest, the one that's subject to this article yesterday, that have permits to go into streams. They will be converting to zero discharge over time. And so as this water is treated, you create these solids. The formation itself has, at least the Marcellus Shale formation, has 10 to 100 parts per million uranium in it. So it's been down there for 400 million years, so it's got all those decay chains. And what we see is the radium-226 in particular is the one of concern, coming back in the flowback water. So when you drop the barium, the other metals, the strontium, stable is barium, strontium. Now it's chemically similar, and so the radium goes with it. So there's some USGS papers out there, and we're validating that. USGS looked at this. The natural gas itself may have a little bit of radon in it, and this is not unknown. We've got some publications from the Department of Energy and from the EPA back in the 70s and 80s, and they were looking at this issue back in the conventional wells back in Texas and Louisiana back in the 70s and 80s. So USGS just went out and looked at some of the wells here in Pennsylvania. And this is off the top of my head, don't quote me. I think they saw from like 1 to 79 picocuries per liter of radon in the natural gas. So it's not a lot of 1 to 79 picocuries per liter in the natural gas. So we're out there. We're going to be looking at that also. Back in May, we actually started going out and looking at the gas storage facilities. It's really interesting, and this is not my field. I'm a medical health physicist, but the gas, as we utilize gas in the Northeast here in the wintertime frame for heating and such, we have been traditionally getting this gas from the South, Louisiana, Texas, comes up big pipelines, distributed in the Northeast. And that gas in the summertime, as we don't use it, gets actually stored in underground depleted geologic formations. So they actually pump the gas in the late spring, summer, and then we'll start extracting the gas. So we're out looking at those gas storage sites. We've also been out to, now you're seeing the shift away from coal to natural gas for baseload burners, for energy generation. So we're out there looking at the ambient radon issues around those burners also. We started the well pad sampling in June, this past June. That's unfortunately been a bit of a moving target. We wanted to look at all the phases of several particular wells, so we wanted to look at this geographically. And that's the sort of upfront prepping the site, getting backgrounds, doing the vertical. These go down 5,000, 8,000 feet, then kick off, and they go horizontal out 5, 8. We've heard as much as 13,000 feet. They do horizontal drilling in sort of a fork formation. So we're interested in the rock cuttings, the nature of the rock cuttings, what we've observed, and we presented this to SWAC a couple days ago here in this room. We have this sort of dividing line in the shale, wet gas, dry gas, and that's a bit of a misnomer. It's not water, it's the long chain hydrocarbons. So the wet gas region tends to have a little more uranium in it. We have seen a few alarms with the cuttings, the horizontal cuttings there. So generally, once they start fracking the formation, the flowback water that's picking up the radium, we don't see so much uranium or thorium, the parent radionuclides, but we're seeing more of the radium-226 and the other decay products there. So we're out there, but we're sort of chasing these now. We're sort of chasing these various well pads, and again, we want to get a good geographic distribution around. So we've been out, looked at a number of wastewater treatment facilities, landfills. We're going to be looking at leachate. We're actually going to take 9 landfills. We're going to take these wastewater treatment facilities, in addition to sampling the sludge and hanging radon measuring devices out there and looking at direct radiation fields and such. We're actually going to follow wastewater treatment facilities from those operations to the landfills, see if the loads of solids, cake, filter cake has shifted any, see if the radiation readings change a bit. So chasing the well pads, and we're going to be pushing off. We're probably going to continue sampling into February of 2014. Jeff?
Question about that. At the wastewater treatment facilities, the study that was done by Duke looked at river sediments downstream from them. Does this study do that also?
We're looking at effluents. Those 3 facilities have been characterized very well. They've actually been characterized by the consultants to that facility. And my decommissioning environmental surveillance group has been looking at all that. There's actually agreements in place to clean those up, and it will, yes, to answer it's not part, no to your question, we're not going to do that as part of it. We took a few samples, but these have been characterized very well down the stream bed. So we will be monitoring those cleanups, and we've set standards. They'll be cleaning those up to the circle of 5 curie per gram standard.
You don't take issue with the Duke findings? Sediments are contaminated.
Highly
in excess of allowable standards.
There's environmental contamination out there. I've kind of looking at that. Did a quick Evelyn Wood speed read last night. This is a dozen pages. 4-point. I just got the paper late yesterday afternoon. So, and it's all in becquerels per kilogram. So I'm converting to curies per gram.
Okay.
I can't do that in my head. But yeah, to answer your question, Jeff, we're not doing detailed studies of that environmental contamination as part of this study. If we find areas that we weren't aware of, yes, because we know we've got these other studies and we've validated those and looked at those, and we'll be monitoring these guys as they
Right. But are you doing sampling of river sediments downstream from other?
If there's effluents, most of these don't have effluents. I mean, these few brine are really the only ones not, except for there's a few POTWs probably that have taken. But yes, as part of the study, we're looking at soil, sediment, water effluents, the frac water coming in that go into these big vaults, and the flowback water, frac water at the well sites. A lot of this too is getting recycled on the pads. I mean, the water use is huge. I mean, this 1 million gallons per site. Well, you get maybe 30% of that back, and it is so expensive to move this stuff around. They're now developing processing on the well pads. So we're looking at those operations on the well pads. We're trying to be, to answer your question, we're trying to be as comprehensive as possible and flexible in the study. If we see something as we move along, for example, I sort of had this aha moment around June, July. It's like, look at some of these USGS papers. They get some very good correlation between the barium and the radium in the flowback water, frac water. but we're not planning on doing any stable elements. So,
Is there some sort of a standard for the toxicity for radon as to, you know, how much of it is a risk and how much of it is
Yes.
not?
Yes, in your home, you know, if you haven't checked your home, come January, you'll see a lot of PSAs,
Right.
check your house.
Right.
The EPA action level, because we can't regulate your
Right.
basement or my basement,
Right.
is 4 picocuries per liter. We
Right.
still see homes, and this, the credit of my radon folks, we had some homes out in the southeast here, over 800 picocuries per liter. And
Right.
some neighbors had 4, you know, this is real dose, you know, 300-400 picocuries per liter. So there's action levels for homes. Workers, yes, there's also in the NRC regulations and OSHA regulations, there's standards for the workplace for an 8-hour exposure. That's 100 picocuries. This is a little map just of some of the landfill. This is an eye test actually. We got landfills, the little green squares across the state. We'll be looking at the leachate all these landfills and looking at other ones in detail. If you look at the Marcellus Shale play, it sort of comes right diagonal through the state. So we want to make sure we're looking at this, you know, wet gas, dry gas region. And down here is sort of the wet gas area here. So, you know, wastewater treatment facilities and various well pads. We've had a lot of good cooperation.
On the wastewater treatment facilities, I know what POTW is, what's the other?
Centralized wastewater treatment facility, and then the ZLD, zero liquid discharge.
And how many of them are discharging and how many are not?
Most of these are.
But can you give me numbers?
The three that I am aware of discharging would be the 3 PA brine fluid services. But name of the place. They just got sold. It used to be PA brine. The POTWs, there are a few POTWs that are still taking conventional. They're bleeding in some conventional oil and gas brines. They can't take the frac water, the flowback water. They have, in fact, a lot of that went away because when we reduced the total dissolved solids limit in the effluents, that they just can't handle it. So they can't handle the salt. So that's necessary. So
Was that formalized, or is it still voluntary that they're not allowed to take?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah. I want to say the TDS rule really. I'll check on that.
Right, thank you.
All sorts of media that we're collecting. The natural gas itself, liquid samples, flowback, frac water, wastewater, solids, the drill cuttings. Cuttings we're actually looking at. We've got X-ray fluorescent analyzers over in the lab, so we'll be able to look at the elemental constituents of the rock, pulverize all that. We've actually got another lab up in Canada that has access to a research reactor that can do neutron activation. So we've really got a lot of good analytical capability here. We're looking at wipes. This is standard health physics practice. You take a little filter paper and wipe surfaces and look for loose contamination. So, and all of these are being analyzed for the alpha, beta, gamma. You know, if it's wipes, and we got counting equipment we're looking at. We've got probes that we can put down on surfaces and look at alpha, beta, gamma levels on surfaces. And the radon, again, we've got, actually we're doing that, my radon division, Bob Lewis, who's heading that up. We can actually go out and sample the gas. We're actually flowing that through these specialized cells and bringing that back and counting our cells. We actually do all the laboratory checks, the blind tests on all of this. We certify all the testers and mitigators in Pennsylvania and laboratories. We actually set up those blind tests where we have traceability back to NIST on that. We sort of added this bit looking at the loads of waste coming out of the wastewater treatment facilities down to the landfills. One of the things that we developed years ago was this construct of okay, we can model all this, and Jim's very familiar with this, these ResRad programs, model this radium in the landfill. And then the question is how do you get to the amount of radium that's in the roll-off coming out of these facilities? And one of the things we did, we used another code called MicroShield. You can actually calculate what the gamma radiation fields are, coming through a box, knowing the thickness of the walls, that sort of thing, densities, and knowing the equilibrium of the radium. Well, we're coming to find out that equilibrium of the radium isn't there. It's going through the wastewater treatment so fast, these radon decay products don't have time to grow in. It takes about 20 to 25 days to do that. So we're going to continue our well pad sampling. We're into the third round with the wastewater treatment facilities, leachate, beneficial use. This is the other thing. These brines have been utilized for a number of years for dust suppression, for de-icing roads. So we're going to look at some of these areas, some of these townships where these brines have been utilized for many, many years, decades, and see if we've got any sort of buildup of radium in those environments. Beneficial use sites, if there are any, I think there may be one or two Act 2 sites that may be using vertical cuttings for beneficial use. If there's any sites like that, we'll look at that. Pipe refurbishing, this has been a big concern for the oil and gas industry for years. This came to light back in the mid-90s. You can actually get the scale, and it's basically barytes, barium sulfates, I think, precipitating out the calcium, and the radium goes with it. You get the scale, just like your boiler, your heater at home, you'll get all this stuff scaling out, and that radium can build up. So we're having difficulty. I don't think there's a lot of this going on, but as they pull old conventional well casings, we'll be looking at these old casings for any sort of scale in gas-fired plants. Compressor stations, there's a lot of compressor stations, gathering stations, and compressor stations to move this gas off. It comes out of the ground at a couple thousand pounds per square inch, but still has to be kicked along down the line. So we'll be looking at this. One of the concerns there is this radon is a noble gas. It doesn't react with anything. The radon, helium, radon, argon, xenon, krypton, all these are satisfied chemically, and they don't react out to form other compounds. So that radon will come out of the formation, it'll be in the gas, go through the dryers and such. But as it goes down through the pipe with a 3.8-day half-life, it's actually changing to other elements in the line. So talking to other health physicists in the oil and gas industry down south, they've seen that they call it pipeline rouge. There's some iron in there, and it plates out, it looks a little red. But we're concerned about these other decay products, in particular polonium-210 and lead-210, building up on these surfaces. So we'll actually be going around these compressor stations with micro Roentgen meters, looking for the X-rays that are being formed from some of these big emitters. Can get access to valves and bends where this stuff would impact and form. We're going to look at that too. We're several key players here in addition to the field sampling teams, Perma-Fix and our radiation protection, all the other program staff that are out there in the field doing all this work. I got Bob Lewis, our division chief for radon, Rich's counterpart in radon, doing all this radon sampling, and Dan Husted up in field ops, who's coordinating all this. So it's all posted out there, all the study plans, peer reviews, sampling plans, all that sort of stuff is out there. We're updating advisory committees, and that's the step here is we've promised everybody that we're updating our SWAC, Solid Waste Advisory Committee, RPAC, by Radiation Protection Advisory Committee, all these various groups. Oil and gas, we did it several weeks ago. Waste tracking, the amount of T-norm waste, this micro per hour versus picocuries per gram. And one of the things, and this came up, I think, earlier in this meeting, the question of what's going out west. There's actually some DOT flags. The federal DOT regulations in 49 CFR, Code of Federal Regulations, as everybody knows, when we ship radioactive material, this is Class 7 hazardous material if it meets certain criteria. Most of this T-norm doesn't hit that level, but some of the stuff we've seen actually can hit these thresholds. So we're encouraging the generators to make sure as they generate this stuff, if it's really concentrated above this 270 picocurie per gram threshold, that they need to be aware of that. And the feedback I'm getting from the industry is that, that we don't even see some of this being proposed for our landfills. They're just going straight out west to this Sprinkler Subtitle C out in Idaho with some of these that exceed the DEP. They're doing that by rail or truck. So.
When do you expect this study to be finished and to report the findings on it?
Yeah, we'd hope to be done, and we're hopefully still on, sort of on track with this. It is slipping. We didn't get the field work started until April. We were saying to 12, 14 months. So that would have put us into the, sort of June, July timeframe. Some of the sampling still slipping. The samples take several weeks to this ingrowth, the laboratories. So we may be sort of middle of the summer before we actually get all the data. One of the other things we're doing is a literature review. There's a lot of literature out there on TMR, EPA and others in other states, and all, quite honestly, there's a lot of groups, conference radiation control program directors, my counterparts. Rich is going to be briefing the Low-Level Waste Forum on this when he goes out to the forum meeting, Health Physics Society, many. I'm getting emails from the UK. All eyes are on Pennsylvania with the study. So as fast as, to answer your question, as fast as we can, and it may be sort of midsummer. Again, we want to peer review this and make sure that we haven't misinterpreted something.
Right. And so the oil and gas surface regulations deal heavily with waste disposal for oil and gas waste are due to be commented on, public comment, the proposal in November, which will open the comment period. So you said that you had spoken to the oil and gas office about it. Have you found anything so far that you think would warrant changing some of the proposals in?
On the oil and gas side, I can't, I'm not intimately involved with the oil and gas rates, but I think, as I understand, as this material is generated on the well pads and such, it's actually exempt from RCRA. You probably know better than I do.
Right.
Okay, so it's exempt from RCRA, but as it comes off, now it falls into the Bureau of Waste Management, and all that is subject to Bureau of Waste Management's regs under RCRA, to the subtitle C. So,
under the proposed regulations, they would still allow drill cuttings and the liners for the well pads to be disposed of on site. So I was just wondering if there's any issues that you found so far in the study that would warrant change in that, taking a precautionary approach.
Right. Yeah, the drill cuttings, even looking at the theoretical levels, we see numbers 10 to 100 parts per million. That's like 3 to 34 picocuries per gram of as Jim mentioned, we've got rock formations out there that far exceed that. It's really the sludges that I think are going to be problematic, and they're not going to stay on site.
So Sarah, your question is, have we found anything that
Flags.
changed, that flags drill cutting activities
On the pan.
specifically?
That you would suggest to the oil and gas office that they should change the proposal to not allow those to be disposed of on site.
As far as the radiological constituents, I don't think so.
Realize that it is to the driller's benefit to not lose gas in the process, and yet I've also seen diagrams that show how much of the gas that comes up is actually lost into the air. Now, I'm more concerned, quite frankly, about the methane getting into the air, because that's a greenhouse, boy, is it ever gas. With the methane is also getting radon and whatever. And are there any changes being made in the process that would reduce the amount of loss of gases?
I'm not sure. We are looking at the radon issues on the well pads. I can't speak to the methane. That's really, I think, Joyce Sampson, air quality program. But I think from what I hear, around the programs, I think there are serious efforts to make sure to minimize those losses, because it's a commodity and it's got value.
Well,
So I
no,
think the industry.
it's to the company's benefit not to lose that gas. But I'm just wondering if they've done any changes in the process of what's happening at the surface.
Yeah, that's really something probably for oil and gas and air quality.
Yeah, because I think that in general that's an important item, not to lose the stuff into the air or whatever is in the gas.
So, coming from Susquehanna County and
Yeah.
having gas
Right,
is, having these things fracked and the blowback,
right.
it burns.
Oh, I know it burns.
It burns.
Well, that's why they're selling this stuff.
No, but I mean, that up to 5 or 10% of the gas that comes up and burns as it's coming up before they get to cap it and all this kind of stuff.
Oh, boy.
It's part of the cleaning out of the.
Oh, dear,
Yeah.
that's not so good. Okay, well, I just hope that they will improve their technology enough so that.
There's new federal regs, and I believe the state just came out with a technical guidance document for that issue.
Reporting the findings of all of this research, will the report include recommendations for changing the current way things are being managed?
Good point, yes. The intent here is to answer those few questions. So in addition to reporting all these findings, we're going to analyze all that, do those pathway analysis. As Rich mentioned, the 25 milligram pathway analysis. We use that for the sort of dose constraint for the landfill disposal. So to answer your question, yes, absolutely, we will interpret the results. If there's recommendations, there may be recommendations at the end of the day to do more sampling in this area or that area to nail something.
If the report will come up with recommendations.
Well, I know that it's a multi-faceted, I mean, you've got a lot of different agency departments, bureaus involved in it. So the question is each of the bureaus going to have recommendations? I mean, I would suspect that Joyce Epson, air quality, would have recommendations focused that they want to get into the report related to fugitive methane emissions, for instance.
No, this is just this is a radiation TNR study. This
Okay, so
is very focused as far as,
Bureau of Radiation Protection might ask to make sure that there's radon-related changes in the way things occur, that sort of.
Yes. First, no. This is just straight radiation, radioactivity, external, internal radiation exposure, waste. But we won't be looking at any sort of methane. I don't think Joyce in the air quality program. There's just not a lot of issues other than radon.
But they may raise concerns about the radon also.
Oh, sure.
Quality issue, and solid waste may raise concerns, and each of the different components.
Actually, we're raising the concerns.
Jeff's question is, in general,
Yeah.
is in addition to findings, are we going to make any recommendations?
Right.
And that those recommendations could be recommendations as a result of some concerns that have been raised, or to improve the process in general. Are they going to be recommendations in the report?
Eric?
All has come up within the last 2 to 3 years, roughly speaking. It's been a heck of a load of work dumped on, not your lap, you don't do anything anyhow.
Nice. 10, 12 hours a day. Thank you very much.
Is your department getting funding from the state to handle this, or is this going to be dumped on the licensee?
Actually, good question. The funding for this is coming half and half. Half from BRP and half from waste. And it is, yes, the question is, are we going to have to license these? And so the justification, we're utilizing material licensing fees to do this.
So
And
the
waste
license
does.
fees- Well, normal license fees have to go up to.
Stay tuned.
How much is this study costing, and if you do find that there's recommendations and follow-up studies needed, what do you expect that to be?
Stay tuned.
We've estimated about $500,000, so about $250,000 for the RAP Protection Fund, about $250,000 from.
Elaborate on what you're sampling at the well pad.
Well pads, vertical cuttings, and we're trying to do representative sample on the vertical cuttings, horizontal. We're looking at all those questions. Surface contamination, is there any surface contamination? Flowback water, they used frac water. If there's recycling done, if there's sediments there, they use these, help me, socks, these filter socks. They're basically, they're cloth material, and they, just sort of roughing filters. So we're sampling all sorts of media, soil, sediments. If there's impoundments and such, if there's any sediments there, we'll look at that. So anything, and the radon, stronger report. There was some kudos for actually doing this study.
Okay, anything more for the good of the
I'll be
order?
around if